The over-under for these guys, Matt, it's 7.5. Are the Oklahoma Sooners ready for the SEC? Go.
It's going to be really tough for them. But you know what, Dean? I do think that they are a program on the rise. It looks like Brent Venables is having them go in a positive direction. It looks like they're moving forward as a program. They've got their quarterback that they think is the guy, Jackson Arnold. I don't want to say that he pushed Dylan Gabriel away or out of the picture, but I think he's the guy that they are very high on. But I don't know if you've got the schedule in front of you.
I do.
I think it's pretty rough, comparatively speaking. But I do think they are bringing in more talent. They're going in the right direction. They've got a promising quarterback, but with that schedule that you might talk about in just a second, I think it's going to be really tough. And then they're going to get Georgia next year, whoever they
Right.
didn't get this year. So it's going to be tough sledding for both Texas and Oklahoma. But you have to think that Texas is in a better position heading into the conference next year.
Well, they're in a better position because they're the better program, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
They lost to Oklahoma, but they are the better program, as we've
Wait,
talked
what'd you say
about.
about OU? What'd you say about OU?
They beat Texas, but Texas is the
Oh, they
better
beat them.
program right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Hey, listen, they beat them. They were not the better team. Alabama
It
was not better
happens.
than Georgia and beat them. I mean, it happens, and all, OU gets complete full credit for that. Here's what I don't like about OU's situation is, like, I know this is like really getting in the way. They open with Temple, which they'll kill them. But then they play Houston and Tulane back to back. Like, I'm not like, can't we get trashier teams in September? Like, that's like, they're probably not losing those games. But can't we open up with, like, is Georgia Southern available? Like, or, you know, somebody
Georgia
not
State
good,
is
because
not. Yeah.
after that, man, it's vicious, Matt. Listen to this.
Yeah.
They do open up with 4 straight games in Oklahoma, so there's that. But they host Tennessee. I think they can beat Tennessee, can't they?
I think they can. Yeah, that could be a 50-50 game depending on how we see Oklahoma at that time, and Tennessee as well.
Okay. So and then, I mean, they play at Auburn. They can win that game, right?
They can. They can win it.
Right,
They'd have
yeah.
to do it, but they can.
Okay. And then they get a week off before Texas. Obviously, proven they can win that game. South Carolina and Oklahoma. That's a game that's not dissimilar to Tennessee and Auburn. And then they go to Ole Miss. That's gonna be tough. Maine, they're playing Maine in early November, which is a very odd positioning, but whatever. And then the close is just woo. At Missouri, that's gonna be challenging. Alabama at home and at LSU. I mean, they can lose. They could lose to Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina. They can lose all these SEC. There's not a game they play in the end. I'm looking for Vanderbilt or Mississippi State. They're not on here. This is brutal.
Yeah, when every game is losable, you probably win most of them. But when you look through it and they're like, that could be a loss, that could be a loss, that could be a loss. That's trouble. So when you've got a week after week after week, and we talked about this with this new conference realignment, everyone's gonna have a tougher schedule. But Oklahoma is coming in, and they better be ready to play because that's not easy at all. And they better get off to a good start because, like you said, it's not going to get easier as the year goes along. So they better win those games early on to Tennessee, and you can't lose at home to South Carolina. That's one that you probably have to circle and say, hey, that's not a game that we can really lose. That should be one of the more winnable games. Auburn on the road is always tough. I don't care how bad
Yeah.
Auburn looks a week before or whatever. That place can be real tricky, and I'm not sure Oklahoma's used to that. I mean, they're used to Baylor and Houston and
Let me
Texas Tech
let me
and
let me roll through their 23 schedule. They beat SMU to open. Excuse me. They beat Arkansas State, just completely annihilated them. SMU and then Tulsa. They pretty well whipped all three of them, and then they got into league play. And here was league play at Cincinnati, which they gutted out. That was not. They did not play well that day. I remember watching that game with you. That was UAB night game. That was
oh
like a
yeah,
noon. Yeah, it was a noon game on Fox. So we watched that game. Cincinnati gave them trouble, but whatever.
yeah.
And then they really got better against Iowa State, blew them out by 30. The upset went over Texas. Everybody was talking about OU. Week off, survive UCF They
Yeah.
played like trash that week. They won that
Yeah.
game, and then they followed that up with back-to-back losses to Kansas, Oklahoma State, who they may or may not ever play again, and then destroyed West Virginia, who's not very good either. And then at BYU, which I think is a really tough place to play, they won that game, and then they smoked TCU before losing to Arizona. So they played, in league play, they played Cincinnati, Iowa State, Texas, UCF, Kansas, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU, and TCU. This year, again, they have, and this is in order, Tennessee, Auburn, Tennessee at Auburn, Texas and Dallas, Carolina at Ole Miss, at Missouri, Alabama at LSU. They're not surviving that, man. I mean, like
Yeah.
them getting an 8-4 season is not that bad. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Yeah. You hope that those fans have realistic expectations.
They
I don't
don't.
know what they are.
They were full blown triggered a couple of summers ago when you try to tell them, you try to tell people, hey, yada yada. They don't want to listen to it, man. They went 6-7 in his first year, and I remember making a video about the Oklahoma folks went nuts, and it's like, well, I mean, you went 6-7. Like, the guy wasn't going to just turn Oklahoma into a complete winner after what the bit. I wouldn't say it was a bit of a mess, would you? I mean, Lincoln Riley went out in the middle of the night to SC. I mean, just completely ditched the program.
Yeah,
and took Caleb Williams with him.
The glory days were 40, 50 years ago. The last title was, I think, 24 years ago. It's a blue blood program. They've got a lot of history, and they're a consistent winner, but recently they haven't been, like Ohio State has been a consistent winner.
Who are
Usually,
they like in the SEC?
LSU in a
Yeah,
way,
but LSU
but
has three
LSU
national
has
champions.
won those. But
Yeah,
they're not
LSU has 3
Alabama.
national championships, one of in this century, one of which was like 4 years ago.
Tennessee or Auburn, because Florida has more national championships too. If we're comparing them to an SEC team, Tennessee, Auburn.
I'll give OU this. They're not a disaster like Auburn and Florida have become. I mean, at times. I mean, there are times when Auburn is just a smoldering mess.
And I think Oklahoma is on the rise, but that schedule is going to make it really, really tough, like you said.
Why do you say
8-9 wins?
I'm not disputing what you're saying necessarily. Yeah. Are you? It's hard though, Matt, to quantify on the rise when we're talking about 8-4 would be a good season, and they just went 10-3.
Yeah, so it's. I don't want to say it could get a lot worse because it could get a lot worse, but I think that year 3 under him, I like the recruiting that they've done the last couple of years. I think he's built a staff that they have a lot of experience. They know what they're doing. And I think they would have a really good year next year if they were still in the Big 12 competing against those teams. But at LSU, at Missouri, at Auburn, at Tennessee, that program and those players, they're not used to that. Now, I'm not sure they really realize what they're walking into because 6-6 Auburn on the Plains, you still better play really well. You better bring your A game if you want to beat Missouri in Columbia right now. And Tennessee, that's 100,000 people.
Well,
and
they're playing. I didn't want to stop you mid rant. I did not want to stop you mid rant, but I will. They host Tennessee, but they should probably beat Tennessee, right? Like, or they'll be like a point or 2 point. That game will be a tight line, right?
Yeah, and I like their chances at home compared to them going to Neyland Stadium.
No
but it could hit them. That schedule could hit them in the mouth really hard if they don't continue to progress as a team and a program. But it's possible, I guess, they could take a step back in their mind if they lose 5 games this year, which looks probably like it's going to happen.
You think they'll lose 5?
I think they could lose 5 of those games for sure.
I don't see. So they're a. I
don't have it memorized yet, but
say that again.
I don't have the schedule memorized just yet, but I think they could lose 5 games. Yeah.
Well, let me just say this: the only line that is listed for Oklahoma so far is as a 10.5 point dog in Dallas. Georgia is a 1.5 point favorite over Texas and Austin. So OU in Austin in In Norman, they'd probably be a 9-point dog to Georgia. In Athens, they'd probably be like almost a 14-point
I was gonna
dog
say,
to
yeah,
Georgia. Is
I'd
that
say 13.5 would have been
Yeah,
my
I mean
guess.
that I don't. Georgia doesn't play a significant game at home. That's the crazy part. So I can't really kind of whip around a little bit, but I mean I think it's just gonna be hard to. It is going to be. Are they ready? I mean, we don't ever know. I think the problem with guys coming into new leagues, Matt, is it has not worked for anybody yet. I mean, it's not worked for anybody. You're talking about Missouri, A&M, Miami, Nebraska. I mean, everybody that's moved around, it's not worked out well. Will Oklahoma be successful in 2024? We'll just have to find out.